Tonight, the Chancellor...
Hello. First tonight, no apologies from the Chancellor of the Exchequer as he explains why Labour has changed its mind on a second runway at Stansted.
Many business leaders were furious and environmental campaigners were cautiously hopeful when the Labour Party manifesto said the runway would not proceed in the next Parliament. Today, the man who was responsible for the original white paper supporting the plans has been campaigning not far from the airport. We'll hear from him in a minute. But first, this report from our political correspondent, Andrew Sinclair.
In the villages and towns around Stansted, there is one issue which everyone has an opinion on.
Well, we don't need it. I don't think we need it.
The main concerns is noise, really bad noise, early in the morning and late at night.
It provides work for a lot of people.
I think it would just be better than building new airports.
For the last 7 years, this has been one of the big debates in our region. Should Stansted have a second runway? Yes, said the government, the decision made by this man.
The first new runway in the southeast should be developed as soon as possible at Stansted Airport, expected to be opening around 2011 or 2012.
Then this week, Labour launched its manifesto, backing a third runway at Heathrow, but adding, we will not allow additional runways to proceed at any other airport in the next Parliament. That's worried those in favour of expansion.
Capacity in the UK is very short now. Heathrow is virtually full. Unless expansion is encouraged, it will damage business.
Until very recently, Labour ministers and their officials would say that there was an urgent need for extra capacity in the southeast, and they were committed to building a second runway here, which is why this week's comments have left people on both sides of the debate feeling rather confused.
It seems to be politicking, and until we've actually had the application for the second runway withdrawn, we're not giving up the fight.
The former Transport Secretary is now Chancellor, and today he was trying to highlight what he's done to help us through recession. He met apprentices in Milton Keynes and held a house meeting with voters in Harlow, close to Stansted. Has there been a change of policy? Has Labour gone soft on the idea? Or is it trying to temporarily close down the whole Stansted debate? Andrew Sinclair, BBC Look East.
Well, late this afternoon, I spoke to Mr Darling and put that question to him. Is it a change of policy? Have they gone soft on the idea? Or are they trying to close down the debate for the time being?
Well, I just don't think there's a realistic chance of there being the sort of expansion that was being talked about a few years ago. The economic downturn has affected air travel as it has other walks of life. And, I think we've made the position pretty clear in our manifesto there.
The airport authorities would say that actually an economic downturn will go away and passenger numbers will go up. And you yourself were saying in 2003 that this extra runway should be built by 2011.
Yes, we looked at the airport capacity in the southeast some 8 years ago, and it was clear that we did need additional capacity. Now, I've always been clear that if you look at what's happening in the wider economy, of course it affects things, and as we get recovery, there'll be more air travel. But this is something that we'll need to look at. But I think people recognise that in the next 5 years or so, it's likely that the existing capacity at Stansted will be able to cater for the demand that we see.
Can I just get some of the wording exactly right on this? It says you won't proceed with any more runways apart from the one at Heathrow. Does that mean that nothing will happen whatsoever?
Well, it means what it says, that we won't be proceeding with a further runway. These things will always be looked at from time to time. But, what we're doing is saying, look at the reality of the situation just now. We don't think that it is likely that there is going to be the huge upsurge in demand over the next 5 years ago, and we're just making that point very clearly.
Today, the Prime Minister has been saying that he admits that he made mistakes when it came to regulating the banks. What other mistakes do you think that you've made with handling the economy?
Well, I think there's no doubt that if you look at the supervisory and regulatory regime in just about every developed country in the world, it will be seen that had it been more robust, had it been tougher, then it might have identified some of the problems that came to such a crisis point by the middle and the end of 2008. But as I say, one of the things that I think the regulators and therefore governments were slow to pick up on is that this is a global industry. What happens in an American bank matters to us as much as what happens to a British bank matters to people living in Germany or the Far East. But remember, there were lots of people, including the Conservatives, who are actually calling for less regulation rather than more regulation. So I don't think it's a problem that's exclusive to us. But let's be honest, if something goes wrong, if you have a responsibility for it, the best thing to do is to say so, learn from it, and then make sure you do things to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Chancellor, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Meanwhile, the English Democrats have launched their manifesto in Peterborough. They have representatives standing in the city and in northwest Cambridgeshire. They say they're fighting for a fairer deal.
In England, we have to pay prescription charges, which they don't in Scotland. We have to pay tuition fees, which they don't in Scotland. We're going to have to pay a tax to pay care for our elderly, which they don't in Scotland. It's not fair. We need to stand up for England, and there is no one to stand up for England at the moment, but there is now because the English Democrats are here.
Well, still to come in Look East, soldiers who risked their lives to clear bombs are honoured for their